but if you could pick one or the other, and you had the choice of it being both at retail, right? I can't see anyone picking this one up versus a Nautilus, right?
One. Hi, welcome back everyone to MyWatches podcast episode 26. It has been a long overdue episode. The last episode we did was back then just with the same host as well, right? Me and Woody that's doing the coverage of Watch and Wonders 2024, and now we're back for 2025. But this time, I assure you, the next episode we have is just going to be 1 week ahead. So stay tuned for that, right? So yeah, welcome back, Woody.
Thank you.
Let's just jump straight into it, right? And we'll do a very quick wristwatch check, and then we'll dive right into it.
Sure. Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, please.
Well, what I have now is so contrarian to what I've been propagating, advocating for years now, right? So what I have is a Mat 1S. Just finally got it. Was one of the last batch to get it off the raffle. It's huge. Doesn't make any sense. Absolutely love it when it spins around.
Right. So I think there's the thing as well. I think as you the audience start to hear more from us, they're starting to know there's several changes that's going to our, you can say, state of mind or state of collections as well. But we'll catch on more on that as well. But that's not for this episode. We'll talk more in the next episode, which is going to be a week from now, right? And real quickly for mine, I'm wearing the Rolex Daytona 126500. Also known as the Panda, right? So I don't think I've unveiled this in the podcast. I obviously put it in the Instagram post. But yeah, so for those who are solely watching for the podcast, this is the first time that you'll be seeing this. And yes, very fortunate to get it retail. We'll talk more about that in subsequent episodes as well, right? So we do notice that in previous episodes of our coverage in Watches and Wonders and so on, it's going to be, it was really, really long. Right, extremely long, over an hour. So I think what we've decided to do is we concise it to just talk about our top five, right? Our top five based on what me and Woody agree beforehand, prior to recording this episode, right? So we're gonna start off with the very, very first one, right? As usual, for every single Watch and Wonders covered, the first major news that you heard, it's going to be on the crown, the king, right? Rolex. And in this year, they have finally launched a brand new line after don't know how many years. And that it's, to me, it's pretty interesting. They did have to do it. But I guess it's at the watches, I mean, the world of watches is at a state that it's starting to be a little bit slow. And it's been a slow past 2 years as well. So I think it's a very, very great time that they released this, right? So I just jumping into it, I'm going to share my thoughts about this. So for those who have listened to the past couple of episodes as well, you would hear me talking about the Rolex Oyster Quartz, right? And I have a very, very soft spot for it, be it very a intricate case. That is something that I'm very much into as well. And the major thing about this watch is that, without getting too geeky or without getting too watch nerdy, the particular movement, it's I would say it's quite an advancement, and it's also super, super thin, right, for what it is, for automatic movement with date complications. And all in all, just to really, really give you my thoughts about it, like the design of the case, like the design of the bracelet, absolutely hate the name. Land-Dweller doesn't sound nice in any form of way. So if I could get rid of it, that would be my preference. And the dial, I would say I'm on the fence of it, but I would reserve my judgment because I have been hearing people praising it upon seeing it in person, saying that the laser edge texture of it is really great. But for me, the 9 and 6 just looks really, really off at the moment. But yeah, I am cautiously optimistic into getting my hands-on experience with this watch. So I will share more when I do, but at the moment, I'll say cautiously optimistic. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Woody?
Well, I share very similar thoughts. I think it's a great release. It's very nice to see something from Rolex that's different. Year after year, we see new colors, new materials, and everyone just plays the guessing game of what we're going to do. And then everyone starts talking about how a left-hand side watch is innovative. It really isn't, right? So now having a watch like this is very cool. And I think what you've pinpointed are also my pet peeves. I don't like any watch which has a date window at the 3 p.m. and the numerals of 9 and 6. I generally have a bias against that. I prefer when they don't do it. Baton indices are always something I prefer when as a layout like this. But I'll stand guided because at the end of the day, perhaps it works in person. I've got no issue with the texture though. The texture is cool. Land-Dweller is just one of those names that doesn't give it an exotic feel at all. I think Sky Dweller had a very nice sound to it. Sea Dweller had a wonderful sound to it. Land Dweller just makes you feel like meh. It just didn't exude something that befits the luxury theme that we're going on, that Rolex is going on as well. Because they are asking for serious money for something like this, even in steel. So you want it to have something a bit more grandeur when it comes to the name of the watch, but it's not quite there. But otherwise, I think it's a great release. In fact, I would say that to prove my hypothesis right, when you look at the version that's diamond encrusted on the side instead of the fluted, you do see baton indices on that one. And I genuinely think that looks better than the 9 and 6. It just has a nicer feel and balance to the whole thing. But then again, I'm also, it's an existing bias. So that's what my thoughts are. I think it's a great release. Worth the talk of town.
Yeah. So to me, I think like what you mentioned, that's very good, right? I mean, in terms of like, how in the past 5-6 years, there's very limited innovation needed by Rolex, right? I mean, they've been just releasing new colors, slap on a exact same design, put in a extra 32 hours power reserve coil a day. Rightfully so, right? From a business perspective, they don't need to do it. People do buy the watch. They can't make enough of them, right? So why do they do it now? Is it, the question to you is it a matter of fact that they are foreseeing it being really still because they have been dragging it as long as they could, and perhaps they already have this in their pipeline 3-5 years ago, and they just bring it out at the rightful time and says, all right, I think it's the right time that we finally release this, right? Or is it actual innovation that they actually able to release it only now?
I think Rolex has always pushed for innovation. They just do it as and when it's required. It's very well a case that there's been enough of a lull of progressive updates that it's time. So I think they didn't have to time it right now. By and large, I think the market, although the watch market has slumped a little bit, but I think it's just finding itself a new normal, simply because prices have been going up a lot. World economy is not really great anyway. And we're doing this at the back of reciprocal tariffs, which will be a topic of another day altogether, right? And Rolex has always innovated in a small way. They just never had to push it very fast. So I feel like it's more a timing thing than anything else.
Fair enough. Yeah, so another thing that I want to talk about as well before we move on into the subsequent our other top fours. What do you think about the position, right? Do you find it weird, as in they are calling it the watch that you position it in between the date just and day date, right? So you're saying that, all right, it's something supposed to be on the higher end and not really entry level model, but not super expensive, like the President. Personally, I think that's a little iffy, right? To me, I would say that this is a perhaps a little more rugged Datejust, a more casual friendly Datejust, but it's still pretty much the essence of the Datejust. That's how I see it. Yeah.
I think it's a very good point you raised, and I might end taking back a little bit of what I just said. I think if you're trying to position it between the two, it's riding on the last bit of wave of integrated bracelets, right? And integrated bracelet watches have had its time in the sun, has always been positioned by the likes of Vacheron, Patek, Audemars Piguet as the higher end, right? And Rolex never had to, so they're trying to just ride on that space. I genuinely doesn't think I know it's thinner, I know it's an integrated bracelet, but to justify that it's a premium, I'm not so sure, because for me it's like choosing between this and for example, a Datejust, right? It's a personal taste. You just pick one that you like more from a look and feel perspective, and one does not exude more premium than the other to me. That's how I look at it. Because if I think of it that way, even if you think of the Oyster Perpetuals that had very interesting dial motifs as well, right? No one said that those were higher than the Oyster Perpetual or of same levels as Datejust either, right? It's all a matter of personal taste, if you like. I think this is a cool release because it's something somewhat different, integrated bracelet design, thinner, new movement, and all that. But to claim that this sits in between, I think it's a bit of a stretch.
Fair enough. So I'll talk about two more things on this. I think one, at least based on the release shots of several other people have taken, the wearability of this watch looks to be really, really good, right? I think the luck to luck for the 36mm is at 43, which is surprisingly good for a integrated bracelet. As you all know, that integrated bracelet tends to wear quite a bit larger, right? And you would expect like a 36 to wear like a 39, 40 of a regular watch and so on. But this doesn't seem to be a case. It seems that the bracelet drips down quite nicely. But I will try to get my hands on this as soon as I can to make my judgment on that. So
I'm looking forward to that as well. So we'll see.
Yeah.
36 for all the way.
Yeah. And one thing to really note as well, from like you mentioned, right, all the other competition that you have, the likes of your Nautilus, your Royal Oak, and so on. In comparison to that, the price point for this watch, it's quite interesting, right? So like a 36mm steel with white gold bezel, that is at 61,800 ringgit, right? In comparison to any of the Holy Trinity, that is 50% off, right? You're talking half the price of it. So that is, from a business perspective as well, I think that's a very good move. But then, if we take a comparison to a genuine Gero Gentile design from the Ingenieur, how does this compare to that? Well, you can look at it from a design perspective and a historical perspective, or you could talk about just purely the material and the horological technology behind it. This, if you look at on the later, this would then be definitely a way better buy than the Ingenieur. And from a price point perspective as well, you're getting more for the price. What are your thoughts on that?
I think this is a very interesting positioning, like you said. Ask me to choose between the two. I'm actually leaning more towards this primarily because you kind of know that Rolex, even if you leave it for 5 to 10 years, you're going to be able to service it. You don't have to worry so much about the durability over a longer period of time. And given it's the latest movement technologies and whatnot as well, you're sort of buying into the future. It's like you're giving yourself even longer time for it to be taken maintenance-wise and whatnot. I feel that the Ingenieur was IWC's attempt to ride on that ability, that Genta-esque space as best as it. Even when it first came out, right, everybody was startled by the price. It's like, wait, IWC, yes, it's Genta design, but maybe you're reaching a bit too far for a pure steel watch. That was the vibes that people were already giving back then.
It's essentially a ETA movement as well. So yeah.
Correct. So in that sense, I think back then when it was first released, everyone was sort of like, it is what it is. But this Land-Dweller kind of begs the question now, right? Between the two, which you'd get. And I'm actually leaning more, if I had the money today and I had to pick one between the two, I'd lean more towards only if they change the dial, obviously, but versus the Ingenieur. But let's say one of those things that's tipping over on the side.
Yeah, and like even if you compare it like to let's just say, let's take the Royal Oak for example. The Royal Oaks are only 50 millimeters water resistance, right? And aside from the design and maybe perhaps the movement finishing and so on, it's pretty much loose to every single aspect of the Land-Dweller, right? You have this advanced movement, you have 100 millimeters of water resistance, which is way more bang for the buck in terms of what you get in terms of what's inside the watch, right? So I think, if my point of view, I think this watch would do really well. I mean, it's a Rolex after all, so yeah.
No Rolex will do badly.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. So that wraps it up really quickly for our thoughts on the Rolex Land-Dweller. We're not going to go through every single release and every single changes, like you mentioned, only the top 5. So as you can guess, top 5 is, of top 1, it's going to be on Rolex. And the second one that we're going to talk about is on the UFA, right? The GSUFA. Right here, right? So this watch is actually not launched yet. It is launching in mid of the year. And it is really, really, really accurate. It's a big innovation from Grand Seiko as well, up to plus minus 20 seconds a year, right? I think that's unheard of for any form of mechanical watches, although it is not 100% mechanical, but like I said, any form of mechanical, this is going to be the most accurate watch that you can buy. Right, and it's shrunk down. The movement has been shrunk down into a really, really compact size as well, which brings this watch down to 30. What is it again? 37? Is it?
Yeah, 37.
37. Yes, that's right. And I'll leave this to Woody, right? Because I think this is something more on Woody's realm. All right, so take it away.
You're being very kind. So, a very strange name, UFA, right? But I'll find accuracy it may be. But this watch, in essence, distills down every Grand Seiko fanboy's wish list into a single watch. And let me get to that, right? So you ask everybody what a general Grand Seiko fanboy, what drew them in, well, likely be the Snowflake. When what the Snowflake was a titanium spring drive watch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here, a spring drive watch, titanium. So 2 boxes ticked already. But the notion that people go into is a bit too big, and I used to own the Snowflake. I know James still owns one as well. It's a little bit thick, and is something that sits a bit strangely on your wrist because it's titanium as well, right? But in this case, they've been able to not only shrink down the movement, get advancements into the movement, make it 20 seconds a year. For comparison, your Rolexes is 2 plus minus 2 seconds a day, right? So even if you go and extrapolate that, that's 5 times more accurate at the very least. Then you now have this model, which is operating at about 11 to 12 millimeters in thickness, which is very much the Datejust level of thickness, if you like. 37 millimeters as well, so they shrunk the whole thing down. Still running the latest technologies, also using the what they call the Evolution 9 design, which I own from the White Birch itself. And I will say there are days where I wear that watch and I go like, I wish it was smaller. And so again, they tick the box again, right? It's smaller, it's in titanium, it's like what everybody wishes a lot of people, I wouldn't say everybody, because the mighty large wrist people in the world go like, no, not 37, why did they shrink it? But to a lot of this part of the world where the preference is in the smaller sizes, and I'm biased towards that as well, it doesn't get better than this. It's got everything that you want. And so I repeat, titanium, spring drive, smaller, thinner, and I'm still missing one key thing. That's a problem with all Grand Seiko watches, and I own a few and I know this. The lack of micro adjust, they fixed that as well, right? So you now have a micro adjust class on this particular bracelet, the first that Grand Seiko is doing. So they're pulling out all the stops. It's a bit like, if you had a list of everything that they know that people want out of a Grand Seiko, they've ticked all the boxes and given it to you. And it's a nice dial as well. So, and that's a hallmark of Grand Seiko anyway. So I think all in all, this is a great release. Priced fair, I'd say it's a fair price for what is being delivered as well. It's cheaper than a Land-Dweller, if that's a comparison. I always treat it as a bit of a where the type, right? So if you're sitting at, you better have something to prove. If you are sitting below that, you kind of can exist in that space. So that's one of those things. So that's what I think. What do you think, James?
So I kind of wish they have debuted this movement with the snowflake, right? I mean, what's the better way to debut this movement with the one particular model that have made the snowflake, right? When you talk about Grand Seiko for, I think, over a decade, they always talk about snowflake, spring drive, right? I think it makes logical sense to bring it back to its roots to then have a shrink down version of the snowflake and with the snowflake's UFA, right? So that's one of my biggest qualms about it. But aside from that, that's probably just me nitpicking as well. But aside from that, I have no issues with it. I think the price is fair in today's age. Um, if you are a watch lover, you will buy it, regardless of your resale price and so on. If you're looking for a value, you're probably going to wait 2-3 years to find one from the secondhand market for a good deal. That's entirely your choice. But aside from that, yeah, you mentioned it ticks all the boxes that the GS fanboys have been screaming about, right? The dial size, that one is going to be on very much a preference thing, but micro adjustment claps, nobody's going to complain about that. Your brand new movement that gives you the ultra fine accuracy, nobody's going to complain about that as well. Still made in the beautiful Zaratsu polishing. So aside from that, I'm just looking forward to what's going to be GS is going to release next, right? In terms of this utilizing this same movement as well. Will they finally bring it back to the snowflakes and update that, because that has been in a way left aside for many years already. So let's just see how I'm interested to see how it goes.
I think it's a very good point you raised. I'm just going to put one final point on this as well, right? So one thing that Rolex does very often is they do discontinue old models, they update the model, they discontinue, right? This is just something Grand Seiko never does. And you raise a point here as well to consider. I think no one would have complained if this was a V2, right? Or the updated spring drive and updated flagship. And you could even go back to the old design and redo it. But it seems to be something that Grand Seiko is not comfortable doing. They've never kind of done a V2 of anything. All through its years, at the most, they do a re-edition of an old watch, and that's after 30 to 40 years. They kind of, anything between 10, Snowflake's now, 14 years old, they are still not re-editing it or whatnot. They're still letting it exist. I think that's something that maybe as part of, we talk about consolidation a lot, even as our collectors, as enthusiasts, right? I think Grand Seiko still needs to look at the consolidation a little bit. And to your point, if this was released as the new flagship and the new snowflake, that's like automatically selling itself marketing-wise as well. So I think it's a very good call.
Fair enough. Right. Aside from that as well, there is also a platinum model that comes with a strap. With to me, a more beautiful dial in comparison to the titanium model. But yeah, nothing much to say about this. The price is quite crazy. Any thoughts on this?
Nope, way beyond my price range.
Fair enough. I think that essentially just concludes our thoughts on the GS. But let me circle back again to Rolex, right? I think one thing I've just thought of as well, with the new movement that Rolex have created, essentially you're able to create a very, very robust movement, which requires very little maintenance, very little use of lubricants, and is also incredibly thin for what it is. How does that shape Rolex future lineup? Are they going to then utilize the same platform, and eventually you have a thinner sub, and next 3 years later you have a thinner GMT, and next year you have a thinner Daytona? Is that going to be your predictions of what's going to happen?
I think that's the simplest way to notice how Rolex will do things, right? So they've kind of roadmapped out, you kind of predicted the roadmap for another 3 to 4 years. It's a very easy fix, and they're known to do this, right? They make minor changes where they can, and it's progressive releases. So by virtue of them doing this, and if you just think about it, I don't even recall, and I probably have to go and fact check this, right? Some of even the Celoxy escapement has been around for a few years already. They haven't cascaded it to all the watches yet. So it's it's a slow progress that they do with these things, and I think they'll make the call when it's right to do it as a wholesale change. But they'll do it slowly in their own pace. That's the Rolex way.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Well, with that, I am, I would say, interested to see what's going on, but also I'm just wondering, where does this leave me with my entire Rolex collection? Am I going to have a brand new batch of neo vintage Rolex because of all this, or it's just going to get shit on with all the better release of the model? But let's just see. It is what it is. As technology advances, you're going to have new and better modern watches, or better for some people, as some people would believe vintage is king. So, yeah.
I'm not saying anything to that.
Fair enough. All right. So on our third topic, it's going to be on the Tag Heuer Formula One. Right. It's called Formula One Solograph right now. So for it may, I would say this particular top three may not be in people's top three, but perhaps we probably need to do a little bit more explanation on this, right? So for those who don't know, Tag Heuer, or more specifically Heuer, has a very, very rich heritage history with racing, right? The Heuer Monaco and everything. And this was a very popular watch back then. It's the first watch that has the name Tag Heuer on it. When they transitioned from Heuer to Tag Heuer, and they used to be the they are now the sponsor for Formula One. Then before Rolex, and before Rolex, it was Tag Heuer as well. So it's Tag Heuer, Rolex, Tag Heuer. So there is a lot of linkage and history that is tied to this particular brand and this particular model as well. But on more specifically, why I find this really, really interesting is the position of this particular model, right? Where it sits. It is, I would say, not cheap, but not expensive either, right? So it's a very interesting point of view where you could potentially grab one of this up and it will fit in your collection quite well, and you could wear it as a daily beater, for example, right? And you'll be able to also have it as a very nice talking piece as well if you are into racing or Formula One. Right, and that's probably why we put this as our top three as well, because we are both avid Formula One watcher, and we enjoy Formula One in general. Right, so personally, I'm definitely looking to get one myself, or maybe more than one. We'll see how that goes. Right. Any thoughts on this?
Well, I have a soft spot for the Tag Heuer Formula One as well. It's one of those watches that carries a bit of history, ties very well with the Tag Heuer brand. And I think it's a great marketing move for them to take back the Formula One sponsorship back. And I think you and I both kind of predicted that the watch is going to make a comeback now that they're back in Formula One, right? And I think you called it earlier than I did, even in our private conversations. Essentially, this is a great release. The price point is a bit steep though. And I make that call out only because you get the most value from the stainless steel models. They've gone with depending on how you want to believe the marketing speak, right? The bezel is still what one can broadly call a plasticky type of material, a modern synthetic, if you like. They've applied, but what you'll notice if you're looking at the prices is the difference between the steel bracelet versions and the ones with the rubber strap, and some of them are even encased in that plastic, are almost insignificant. So I almost feel like you're paying so much for what might just be a rubber strap plus a plastic-esque case versus a full stainless steel case. And that's all relative, if you like. Like, I think the one showing there, the red one, right? The one that's coming soon, that's a rubber strap. I think the case is in plastic as well. The price is almost the same as the stainless steel one. So it makes it a very hard sell for those models. But I think the base models are interesting. I also like, although I'm not sure how they selected this, I also like how they're going to release some of these models at the actual Formula One races as they come towards the later part of the year. I think that strategy is a clever one from a marketing standpoint because it plays to the mindset, the exclusivity. And it is a racing themed one, so they picked one for example, Silverstone. I think Singapore is getting a very good pitch there in because they're going to have a model there as well, and a few others that have a specific watch that's going to be released there. But it's a soft spot I have for this watch, and given that it's meant to be an entry level into Tag Heuer, I think Tag Heuer is showing its operations there that they want to be back there at the top of the mainstream luxury segment as well. So they're positioning all of this to get you there, right? I think they're on the right track in that sense. Still a bit steep, but I like.
Well, so talking about price, right? I did find this very interesting in terms of why they position it this way, because I had a very long thought about it. Because when I just look at it, right? If I were to execute it, I would probably position it a little bit higher than the Moonswatch, but this is like 7 times more than the Moonswatch, right? But then I had a thought again when I circle back. It's like, if I do it that way, then I essentially, you can say that I've cheapened my brand, right? I'm going with competing against a plastic watch, whereas this is a stainless steel piece, at least the one with bracelet, and it has a proper solar movement. It is a movement that doesn't require you to change the battery for 15 years, and it takes like 2 minutes charge to get 1 day's worth of a battery, right? 2 minutes under the sun, it gets 1 day worth of battery. So I guess you can view it as one, they probably don't want to cheapen the watch, and second, it's probably a good way for them to upsell it as well, right? You just add in something more than what the Moonswatch has, and you position it as a more superior product versus that. Does that mean that it's worth 7 times more than the Moonswatch? Maybe not, but from a business perspective, I can see what they're trying to do, right? And perhaps it's the right move to get more revenue. Yeah,
I think to make that comparison, let's put another relative one, right? So, yes, the initial enthusiast expectation is the level to Tag, so you kind of need to position it like a Moonswatch. But then if you think about the one other watch that's quite popular around the enthusiast space, that's also a solar movement, also from a reputed brand, and you come with the Cartier Tank Solar, right? It's operating at a higher price than this and runs on a leather strap anyway. Yes, it's got a lot of history coming there, but this actually positions lower than that. So I would say that it's in a space where you'd feel a little bit uncomfortable, but you can't say that it's not par of the course either. It's one of those things that if you put the other perspective, it's where it needs to be now, unless you're saying that buy and throw away, right? Which is not what this watch is meant. Unlike a sword, which for all intents and purposes, when they say biodegradable, that watch is going to disintegrate.
Fair enough. So I guess so this is the only watch that we're talking for today that I've actually seen it in person. Fortunately, I have been able to get my hands on it when I was in Adelaide, Australia. One of the boutique did have one available for viewing, right? So I was able to see it, and it was, aside from the look of the colorful looks, it's actually pretty well made. From what I look at it, it has some heft to it, and it feels like it's if you just close your eyes and you just feel the bracelet and everything, it does not feel like a cheap product, right? It feels like probably, if you look at the bracelet comparison between other Tag Heuer bracelets as well, if you close your eyes and have a blind test between both of them, you probably won't be able to tell the difference, right? I think where the perception where people expect it to be cheaper as well is just because they associate things with colorful plastic bezels and so on to equals to be cheap, right? Perhaps you can also say that Moonswatch has perhaps ruined the market for it. So I think there's many perspectives to look at it, but like you mentioned as well, buying a Moonswatch would probably allows you to keep the watch for like a maximum of like 3 to 5 years max. I've seen and know people who have ruined their watch in like 1 or 2 years, right? So I say we have a very big caveat, 3 to 5 years max. But this watch, you are guaranteed to be able to withstand 15 years, bare minimum, right? And if you, after 15 years, if you change a brand new battery, that's another 15 years on top of it. So in that comparison, 7 times more for, 15 years more, 7 years more of usage versus average Moon's watch life expectancy, perhaps it's actually worth 7 times the price in that case. Yeah.
No contrarian point of view there. I'm just also reflecting that between picking one of this up versus, let's say, something from, and this is no beat on any other brands, right? If I go and see a Longines or something like that, which is around the same price, I'm actually going to lean more towards this because this is just so much more iconic in that sense. It's one of those things. It's very hard to put a number to it, but I think it's. I wish it was cheaper, but I can't really say it's not fair to price it that way.
And I think what you make is a great point as well. Is I think one is iconic, and second, it's very easy to fit in anybody's collection, right? If you put in like a Longines and everything, it's if you already own a tank and so on, perhaps a Longines would clash with that and so on. But what other watches looks like this? You don't have it. At least I don't have it in my collection, so I'm very happy to add one or two of this into the collection, and it very much fits, and it doesn't clash with any other watches that I have, right? Which is fun, colorful, poppy, and the bonus perks of it is it being iconic and rich in history, right? So yeah, you will definitely be seeing at least one of it on my wrist. I will definitely get the core production model, and I've got my eye on one of the limited edition as well. So depending on what my luck is, if I manage to get the limited edition one, you're probably seeing two on me. But yeah.
Well, we'll wait and see then.
Yeah. All right. So that concludes our third topic that we want to talk about. Moving on to the next one, which is we have briefly mentioned it just now as well, which is the IWC Ingenieur. Right now, it has several other releases as well. It has the black ceramic, it has the perpetual calendar, but the one that really caught our eye, especially Woody for tiny wrist stripe, it's going to be the 35mm release of the Ingenieur. Right. So take it away, Woody.
Yeah. So, as I have a undoubted bias towards smaller watches, and I always make the argument that they were originally smaller anyway, and it's only in the recent 10-15 years that watches become a lot bigger. So this was a quiet release, I think a lot of emphasis was put on the other models from IWC, but they quietly released a 35mm version of the watch. And the one thing I like about smaller integrated bracelet watches, as James alluded to earlier as well, they tend to wear a little bit bigger anyway. And so even a 35 would ultimately feel a little bit more like a 37, 38 on the wrist when it's an integrated bracelet watch. And this has the Genta S history as well. So it was a nice thing to be able to get a Genta S like integrated bracelet watch in at 35mm at a price point that is below that of any of the other Genta designed integrated bracelet models. IWC has positioned this 35mm pricing a bit lower than the 40 as well. But it does have caveats, because this is not something I immediately realized, but the movement that's in this watch is inferior to the 40mm one. This only has I think a 42-hour power reserve. It could very well be a updated ETA movement that's been rebranded as well. Whereas the 40mm one is their own manufacturer movement with higher power reserve and all that. So you aren't getting all that for that watch. But having said that, it's the closest one can think of to an integrated bracelet watch that has existing history, has an existing Genta S link, and is finally at a size that one can consider. As someone who's looked at, priced out of the Royal Oak and Nautilus, had a look at the overseas and went like, I'm never going to be able to pull any of them off. And even the smaller ones don't quite look very balanced. This one seems to have pulled out the balance quite well. So I like it. Although this now has the difficult task of being compared to, as we rightfully did just now, to a Land-Dweller, right? Like between the two, you now have a toss-up. Like, which do you go for? And I think perhaps IWC drew a short straw here to release this at the year of which Rolex decided to release theirs, right? It goes like, hey, wait a minute. I could get a Rolex for that price now. For those in the value retention play, that's longer, durability longer, updated movements, everything plus, right? And here we have one that's a quiet release, should wear fairly well, but for the asking price, you go like, is for a full steel watch, a bit hard to justify, but I like it still. It's something I would have asked for when they first released it, so it's finally out. It's just that the timing of it and the pricing of it makes the question asked whether you'd pick one or the other. And I think, James, you there as well, right? And you sort of alluded to that earlier.
Yeah, so I would say that pretty much aligned with your thoughts, right? I always been eyeing in terms of one of the Ingenieur as well, especially if you look at the secondhand market for the other variants. It's pretty good buy, right? Not as brand new, but as secondhand. Perhaps this 35 as a secondhand purchase could be something that I look at, but yeah, it's very much the question remains to me as well. Do you pay for history? Do you pay for design? Or do you pay what's underneath the hood? Right. So I honestly don't have an answer at the moment. Yeah, if gun to my head, if I have to pick one right now, the Land-Dweller easily. But I would say that I am still very much toying with the idea of potentially finding one of these bad boys in the secondhand market when nobody wants it. Yeah.
Fair. No disagreement. Be fighting with that time as well.
Fair enough. Yep. All right. So the last one, right? The last thing we're going to talk about, it's going to be on the Cubitus, right? The Cubitus being shrunk down to the 40 millimeter. Currently only available in precious metal. You have one in white gold and you have another one in rose gold. There isn't too much coverage about this as well. It's quite stealthy release versus the other Patek releases that they have, more on the Calatrava line. But the reason why I want to talk about this, it's because I don't think we covered the release of the Cubitus as well in this particular podcast, right? So just a quick thought on that. The Cubitus for me, as a look by itself, I don't really have an issue with it. But where I have an issue with it is that the marketing of it and what they the claims of it, right? So, for example, if they call it a Nautilus Square or Square Nautilus, I'm actually really fine with it because it's calling it what it is, right? Essentially, is a Square Nautilus, right? But they went ahead the other way around, say that based on all the history of Patek they have with shapes, the CEO decides to take matters in his own hands and start deciding a specifically square shaped watch and call it the Cubitus, right? I find that's all marketing. Whether it works for you or not, I don't know. Doesn't work for me. But yeah, but take everything aside, the looks of it, just looking at it, we're looking at the original one as well, the 45 millimeter. I think it looks quite good, right? It looks, in my opinion, better than the Nautilus, right? Because I don't know why I've never really liked the Nautilus, but I can somehow I do dig the look of this. And especially in the 40 millimeter with the particular rose gold, the wrist shot for this was really, really good. However, that also comes with a crazy price, 363,600 ringgit, right? Yeah, so it is mad. And I think one of the biggest qualm that people have as well is that the movement is not square, right? You're essentially slapping on a regular circular movement on a square-shaped watch conveniently, so that you can have a brand new line and call it the Cubitus, right? So that's where I do have a major issue with it. Yeah. So what are your thoughts?
I'll keep my thoughts on this short. Am I a fan of the Cubitus? No. Have I ever toyed with the idea of ever owning a Nautilus?
Hmm.
Maybe at one point in my life, but never would have spent money on it either. So as someone that's never really liked the Cubitus anyway, I felt the whole way that it was launched and marketed was a farce. But if you like it, power to you. I think it doesn't work for me from a design standpoint. I like the fact they should have, right? Because 43 was of a square watch, although it does wear a lot smaller than the numbers set there, right? It's huge. And I think this is the right size, matching with, it's almost like now you have an alternative, a proper alternative to the Nautilus. But I wonder if, again, right, if in a world where you could pick one or the other, of course you can't, because you can't get a Nautilus easily either, right? But if you could pick one or the other and you had the choice of it being both at retail, right? I can't see anyone picking this one up versus a Nautilus, right? For all reasons already said and others. I like that they shrunk it down. I realize it's a business decision why they've not gotten this in steel at all. I think it's the right thing for them to do from a business perspective, but I'm not going to be one to say, go ahead, line up, get one of this. I'll leave it as.
Yeah, fair enough. So I think there's a lot of sentiments from the watch community as well. Essentially, what they say is that yes, it is better versus a the 40 millimeters is better than the 45, but a better version of a shit is still a shit, right? So that's what people do say. So do with it what you will. All right. So that is essentially our top 5 things that we want to, in a way, to share, and in a way to share our thoughts and opinions about it as well. And aside from that, aside from talking about the top 5, top 5 thoughts from the Watch and Wonders, which is the Rolex Land-Dweller, the GS ultra fine accuracy or fine accurate, one or the other. The third, Tech Heuer Formula 1. Fourth, IWC Ingenieur 35, and lastly the Cubitus 40mm, right? Aside from that as well, let's just do one more unscripted, an honorable mention, and a epic fail, right? Let's call it that, right? So perhaps I'll go first. I'm not sure if we'll clash this or not, but if we do, I'll think of something else and so on, or what, but we'll just play by ear, right? I would say the honorable mention for me would be there's a few I thought about it. I've been thinking about it the whole day as well. But it's probably going to be the JLC Reverso Geographic, right? The one in blue, with the big date on top, and behind you see a word time, right? And to me, it's just aesthetically, every single thing about it, it's beautiful, right? Perhaps this is there's some bias from me as well, because I've been looking for something to spice up into my collection, right? And one of the things that I do not have, which is a big date, right? So that's what something that really caught my eye, right? So yeah, I really like that watch from a aesthetic point of view. However, it is really thick and big. I have not seen it in person, but just looking at dimensions and stuff, it looks huge. As goes with any nice and high horology reversal. Unfortunately, they are all really big. But yeah, that would be my honorable mention. Yeah.
It's a good choice. And it's a common theme. There was no clash. My honorable mention happens to be a world timer, well, but it's not from JLC. I actually like the JLC one. It's well executed. It's typical class act. Aesthetically, mechanically, done really well. The one I'm going for is actually the Nomos world timer. Very fun. And I think it's an ongoing theme that's with us right now as well, right? Many different color editions. They've a standard. It's almost like a Tech Heuer Formula One. You've got the standard, and you've got a special limited release of color editions as well. And this is a 40mm watch. Fun colors. Nomos knows how to do colors. Priced reasonably well for a proper mechanical world timer as well. It's got a little button mechanism that allows you to swap through all the cities. It's an in-house movement as well that they've done. A 40mm watch under 10mm thickness. Really fun, really well executed. No one really expected to come from them, like from Nomos. And it's one that I think even the color combinations, if you chance to look at it, they just have a way with color. They know how to do it. I think it's part of the German design school that they find that balance between design and practicality. Really like that one. That's my honorable mention for this. I think they're going at about 4,000 plus US dollars, so that works out to be about it. So I think it's a value buy for a world timer as well from a reputed German brand.
Fair enough. And the reason why I'm smiling right now is because my second top contender is also a like a world timer or annual calendar, speaking in that sense as well. But yeah, I'll just leave you to guess which is it. But yeah, I think it's a common theme that once you have built a sizable collection, you start looking at what's the missing pieces, right? But yeah, so that's pretty interesting. All right, let's move on to the epic fail before we conclude the particular podcast for today. The epic fail for me, it's going to be on Zenith, right? Zenith doing the 160th anniversary. They decided to release a all blue watch with several of the lines, the Chronomaster Sport, the Pilot, and one more. I don't know, it just doesn't work for me. I guess it stands out because the entire thing is dark, bright blue, right? It's really in your face, but that's about it, right? I really feel they could have done much. And being a fan of Zenith, I'm honestly disappointed in the several past releases, right? I feel like they can definitely do a lot more with what they have, and instead they come up with releases like this with 160th anniversaries, turn everything blue, make it striking in your face, and then you have them also recently releasing the Rainbow Chronomaster Sports as well. So everything just adds up together. I am not liking where Zenith is heading at the moment. Yeah, so that would be my epic fail.
No disagreement there, to the point of which when I was looking for a fail for this podcast, right? The fact that they think of them for a positive and negative, they were just so mad. And I'm a Zenith fan as well. I'm one of my favorite watches, El Primero Chronomaster Original, right? I just completely, it's off the radar for me. I just didn't even bother whatever they released. It's probably like one of those things where I scroll and it's like, oh, okay, next. It didn't even bother to look at it. So that it's already. But my fail, I've gone to something a little bit more touchy. I know people personally who'd be very upset with me for picking, and I'm going to butcher the name while trying to say it as well, right? It's the Cartier tank.
Cartier.
Yeah. I just don't get it. Maybe I'm not the market for it, right? So for those who've never seen it, it's a tank with just slits for the hour, jumping hour, and the minutes, right?
Minutes.
So its claim to fame is it's a watch with a jumping hour mechanism, completely sealed up top and bottom, in also asking for precious metal. So you're basically getting a bracelet that tells the time. It has the name Tank. I know it's got history. I know they did it before in the past. But man, and the worst part about it is the special edition is the one which you sort of, the time, I think the hour is a bit off tangent and the minutes is also a bit off tangent in platinum. I'm like, you gotta be some guy who has so much money to spend and so bored and such a big fan of Cartier to buy that watch. Mm-hmm. Many better watches out there. And it's on a roll recently, for the past few years, right? But to see that come out, it feels like, oh, that's a bit of a blow. But again, I have my biases to Cartier, against Cartier from time to time, just out of the fun of it. But this one really rubbed me. And part of the reason that's the case as well, you try and upsell the idea that it's a tank, it's a jumping hour, right? And then the Max Buser and Eric Giroux show you how to make a jumping hour for 15 to 20,000 that's unique. And you can raffle for that right now as we speak as well, right? And I go like, why would you spend that sort of money for? You really have to be a Cartier tank inner fan who just wants something different. Maybe that's the target market. I'm not it. But for a brand as prominent as on the up track as Cartier is, I felt like this was a bit of a low. Nothing very standard this year. Maybe expect given that they've done well for the past few years. But that's my pick for dubious honor. Feel free to chip in where you want to, James.
Fair enough. I mean, perhaps one way you could look at it is that people are getting more precious metal in their watch case when they purchase it. So that's one pros that you can look at it. But yeah, to me, I don't really have much issue with the regular yellow gold and rose gold one. I think the jumping hour and minutes, they are okay. Will I buy it? No, but because I'm in the market to add in a jumping hour as well if I can. But will I buy that? No, there are better options. But I can see people buying it. I can see a reason why, especially with history of it. But that platinum asymmetric one where you are meant to look at it when you are when you're driving and angle it that way. Yeah, that one it's being left field for the sake of being left field, in my opinion. I don't get that one. All right, the rest I'm neutral about it, I would say. But yeah, but since that you have mentioned about Cartier as well, interestingly, our next week episode for this particular podcast will include Nick, aka what's his username again? Cartier Watch Lover. But I'll just put it here. So yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, so he will join us for next week for our next episode, and we will talk further more about in terms of our state of collections and what has changed since we have last spoke as well. Because we did have a previous episode with Nick talking about his watch collecting journey, and let's just see how that's changed for him, for us, for Woody, for myself as well. And I can assure you, lots have changed, right? There's a reason why we haven't been on the podcast as well, because there's lots of things going on in our lives, leads to changes and so on, yada yada. But we'll talk more about that on another day.
All right. So, Nick, an invitation to rebut to me right up.
All right, guys. That's it for today's episode. It's great to be back. I hope you guys have enjoyed as much as we do, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.